Hello, everyone. I'm Kristen Proud, Vice Chair of New York Creates, and I'd like to welcome everyone to the meeting today. At this time, we'll do a quick roll call of the directors who are participating in today's meeting, starting with Michael Abbott.
Present.
Heather Hage.
Present.
And Joan McDonald.
Present.
Great. Thank you for joining. I would also like to recognize the advisory representatives designee, Ian Rosenblum, who is the designee of the Chancellor of the State University of New York. In addition, I would like to recognize the member representatives, Ryan Farrell, representing the Research Foundation of the State University of New York, and Dr. Andrew Russell, who is representing the SUNY Poly Foundation today. In addition, we have New York Creates officers who are participating in the meeting: David Anderson, Paul Kelly, Scott Bateman, Timothy Taylor, and Patricia Buckland. At this time, I would ask everyone to please mute their computers if you are not speaking to minimize any background noise, and also ask if you would please identify yourself when you are speaking or if you are making a motion today. For purposes of voting, I will call out each director's name for their vote so we can accurately record the vote. At this time, I would ask if anyone has a conflict of interest with respect to the items on today's agenda, and if so, if you would please make an appropriate disclosure on the record now, and then when we come to that item or vote on the agenda, if you would please recuse yourself both from any discussion and from the vote itself. Does anyone have a potential conflict? Hearing none, we'll move to the first order of business today, which is the approval of our minutes from the February 29, 2024 meeting. Could I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes?
Moved, Heather.
Thanks, Heather. A second, please.
Mike, I second.
Thank you, Mike. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Okay, hearing none, we'll go to the vote, starting with Mike Abbott.
Aye.
Heather Hage.
Aye.
Joan McDonald.
Abstain. I was absent.
Okay. I would also like to be recorded in the affirmative on the approval of the minutes. So the ayes have it and that motion is adopted. Our next item on the agenda is New York Creates Resolution number 28. This resolution is an appointment to the Finance Committee. Could I have a motion to consider and approve a New York Resolution number 28, which would appoint Dr. Douglas Gross to the Finance Committee, please?
This is Joan, so moved.
Thank you, Joan. A second.
Second, Heather.
Thanks, Heather. So for a little bit of background, pursuant to the bylaws of the corporation and resolution number 1, which was dated December 18, 2019, New York Creates established a finance committee consisting of 5 board directors and provided that each director of New York Creates serving on a committee of New York Creates shall be deemed to have been appointed as a committee member of the corresponding committee of FRMC and FSMC. On May 1st, 2024, the members of the corporation appointed Dr. Douglas Gross as a director and chair of the New York Creates board. Dr. Gross brings tremendous experience to the board, having served for decades in high-level positions in the semiconductor and microelectronics industries, and also was previously president of New York Creates and chair of the board of New York Creates. So New York Creates is certainly pleased to welcome Dr. Gross back to the board, and we're now seeking approval to appoint Dr. Gross to serve on the Finance Committee and to reconstitute the Finance Committee as follows. Myself as the committee chair, Dr. Doug Gross as a committee member, and also Heather Hage as a committee member. So at this time, the requested action is to approve New York Creates Resolution number 28. I will open up the floor to see if there are any comments or questions about this resolution. Hearing none, then we'll move to the vote, starting with Mike Abbott.
Aye.
Heather Hage.
Aye.
Joan McDonald.
Yes.
And I would also like to be recorded in the affirmative, so the ayes have it, and this motion is adopted. And we welcome Dr. Gross not only back to the New York Creates board, but also as a member of the Finance Committee, and look forward to working with him again. At this time, I would like to introduce Mike Abbott, who serves as chair of the Audit Committee, to provide the Audit Committee report today.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I'd like to ask for a motion to consider and adopt a resolution approving the tax filings for New York Creates, FRMC, and FSMC.
This is Joan, so moved.
Thank you, Joan. Second, please.
Second, Heather.
Thank you, Heather. By way of background, New York Creates, FRMC, and FSMC engaged KPMG to review their tax filings for the year ending on June 30th, 2023, pursuant to authorization by the board at its meeting on May 12th, 2021. KPMG has now completed its review of the New York Creates, FRMC, and FSMC tax filings, and the draft tax filings were provided to the board in advance of this meeting. The Audit Committee approved resolutions for New York Creates, FRMC, and FSMC described in the memorandum provided to the board in advance of the meeting, including recommendations that the board approve the same actions. So requested action today is to approve resolutions for New York Creates, FRMC, and FSMC approving the tax filings subject to and conditional upon completion of any remaining administrative items to the satisfaction of the chair of the Audit Committee, as requested in the memorandum provided to the board in advance of the meeting. Is there any discussion of the matter? Okay, hearing none, I will ask each director for their vote on the motion. Heather Hage?
Sorry, I don't think you heard me. Aye.
Okay, sorry, yep, didn't hear it. Thanks, Heather. Joan McDonald?
Aye.
Thank you. Kristen Proud?
Aye.
And I also vote in the affirmative. The ayes have it and the motion is adopted. Thank you. I will turn it back to the Vice Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. So at this time, as Chair of the Finance Committee, I would like to present to you the Finance Committee report. The first item that we have is a lease amendment with PsiQuantum. I'd ask for a motion to consider and adopt this lease amendment.
Heather.
Thank you, Heather. A second, please.
This is Mike. I second it.
Thank you very much. So this is a quantum computing company which currently leases 181 square feet of office space in CSTEM for a one-year term that will expire on June 12th, 2024. Company is seeking to renew its lease for the current space and also to add 121 square feet of additional office space for a one-year term commencing June 13, 2024. The tenant will have an option to extend the lease for one additional 12-month term and will pay $12,000 in annual base rate rent for the space. That is based on a rate of $39.74 square foot. And then the renewal term, if that is applicable, if they decide to renew for the additional year, the tenant would pay $12,360. And that is based on a rate of $40.93 per square foot. This rent does include operating expenses as well as utilities. So the Finance Committee reviewed and approved the resolution described in the memorandum provided to the board in advance of this meeting and makes the recommendation to the board that it approve the same action. So at this time, the requested action is approval of a resolution approving and authorizing the corporation to enter into a lease amendment with PsiQuantum in the just as described in the memorandum provided to the board in advance of our meeting today. Are there any questions or any comments about this lease amendment? No?
Not a question, just a request that if going forward, that we could have the job numbers for each of these companies, it would be helpful as part of the, as part of the background.
Joan, the on-site job numbers, the overall company numbers, or both?
No, the on-site.
Just the on-site numbers.
Just the on-site, because then we'll have a sense when we're approving these, how many employees are in this facility for us.
Yeah, Joan, we will add that going forward.
Great.
PsiQuantum is a relative startup,
Yep.
so their numbers are small, about 15 people on site.
And I think saying that they are a startup, because then if we see over time, that's a great story for all of us.
Right.
Great, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, we'll move to the vote. Mike Abbott,
Aye.
Heather Hage.
Aye.
Thank you. Joan McDonald.
Aye.
And I would also like to be recorded in the affirmative, please. So the ayes have it and the motion is adopted. The next item is a lease with Xanadu Technologies USA, Inc. I'd ask for a motion to consider and adopt this lease.
This is Joan, so moved.
Thank you. A second, please.
This is Mike. I second it.
Thank you. So Xanadu is a quantum computing hardware and software company with its principal place of business being in Washington, D.C. The company is seeking to lease approximately 181 square feet of office space in CSTEM for a term commencing on the date of the last execution of the lease and terminating on March 31, 2025. The tenant will have the option to extend the lease for one additional 12-month period. The tenant will pay a total initial annual base rent of $7,200 for the space, which is based on a rate of $39.78 per square foot. For the renewal period, if any, the annual base rate would be $7,416, which is based on a rate of $40.97 per square foot. This rent does include utilities and operating expenses. The Finance Committee reviewed and approved the resolution described in the memorandum provided to the board in advance of this meeting and makes the recommendation to the board that it approve the same action. So at this time, the requested action is approve a resolution approving and authorizing the corporation to enter into a lease with Xanadu as requested in the memorandum provided to the board in advance of today's meeting. I'll open it up for any questions or comments. Joan, I think we'll note the same comment on this resolution as you had on your previous resolutions and any similar going forward.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. All right, we'll move to the vote. Mike Abbott,
Aye.
Heather Hage,
Aye. I don't know why you can't hear me for the first time. Aye.
we see your lips moving, Heather, no worries. Joan McDonald,
Aye.
and I would also like to be recorded in the affirmative. So the ayes have it and this motion is adopted. The next item of business from the Finance Committee is a lease amendment with TEL Technology Center America, LLC. I would ask for a motion to consider and adopt a lease amendment with TEL.
This is Mike. So moved.
Thank you. A second.
This is Joan, I second.
Thanks, Joan. So TEL is a global company that specializes in innovative semiconductor production equipment. It currently leases over 40,000 square feet of office, lab, and storage space in NanoFab South and is seeking to lease an additional 10,120 square feet of office space in NFS. With this additional space, TEL would be leasing a total of 52,336 square feet of office and storage space in NFS and 4,162 square feet of laboratory space in NFS. The term for the new space will commence on June 1, 2024 and will run concurrently with the term of the current lease for the majority of the premises, which extends to November 13, 2025, with an option to extend for 2 additional 24-month terms. For the lease year ending on November 13, 2024, the tenant, TEL, will pay $37.87 per square foot for the office space and $96.12 per square foot for the lab space. The rent does include operating expenses, utilities, as well as parking. The rent will increase 3% annually during the term of the lease and during any renewal period. The Finance Committee reviewed the resolution described in the memorandum provided to the board in advance of this meeting and approved it, and is making the recommendation to the board that we approve the same action today. So the requested action is approve a resolution approving and authorizing the corporation to enter into a lease amendment with TEL as requested in the memorandum provided to the board in advance of this meeting. Are there any questions or comments regarding this lease amendment? Hearing none, then we'll go to the vote. Mike Abbott,
Aye.
Heather Hage, Joan McDonald,
Aye.
And I would also like to be recorded in the affirmative. The ayes have it, and this motion is adopted. The next agenda item is a shuttle services agreement. I would ask at this time for a motion to consider, approve, and ratify an agreement with DJB International Limited, doing business as Premier Transportation.
So moved, Heather.
Thanks, Heather. A second, please.
This is Mike, I second it.
Thank you. So a little bit of background on this one. At our meeting in February, the board approved a revocable license agreement with Crossgates Mall to provide off-site parking for FRMC during construction of NanoFab Reflection, and also approved an agreement with US Coachways, Inc. to provide shuttle services between Crossgates Mall parking area and the Albany Nanotech campus. US Coachways was unable to fulfill the terms of the agreement, and its agreement was subsequently terminated. Due to the need for immediate transportation shuttle services, FRMC entered into an agreement with Premier to provide the aforesaid shuttle services. Premier had submitted a bid in response to the competitive procurement and was the second lowest bidder after US Coachways. FRMC determined that Premier's bid satisfied the requirements of the procurement, and FRMC is now seeking ratification of the agreement with Premier. The services under the agreement commenced on March 4, 2024 for a one-year term. The agreement, as amended as of April 1, 2024 to include additional bus size and scheduling options, will automatically renew monthly unless notice of non-renewal is given. Under the terms of the agreement, Premier will provide shuttle service with a 56-passenger bus or one or two 40-passenger buses or a combination thereof between Crossgates Mall and the Albany Nanotech campus between the hours of 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. on weekdays, except for holidays. The cost for the 56-passenger bus for a 14-hour day is $1,390, and for a 6-hour day is $1,095. The cost for a 40-passenger bus for a 14-hour day is $1,295, and the 40-passenger bus cost for a 6-hour day is $965. All of these figures include the driver, fuel, tolls, vehicle maintenance, repair, insurance, and storage costs, but they do exclude overtime. Are there any questions or comments about this shuttle agreement? Okay. All right, then the requested action is to approve and ratify FRMC's execution of the agreement and the amendment for shuttle services with Premier, and all acts of any officers of the corporation that were taken or made with respect to the aforesaid agreement as amended with Premier, as requested in the memorandum provided to the board in advance of this meeting. So we'll move to the vote, beginning with Mike Abbott.
Aye.
Heather Hage.
Aye.
Joan McDonald.
Aye.
And I would also like to be reported in the affirmative. The ayes have it, and this motion is adopted. The next item from the Finance Committee is an agreement with Capital District Transportation Authority, otherwise known as CDTA. I would ask for a motion to consider, adopt, and ratify an agreement with CDTA.
So moved, Heather.
Thanks, Heather. A second, please.
This is Joan. I second.
Thank you. So to provide another option for employees to travel to the campus during the construction period of FRMC entered into an agreement with CDTA to provide bus service for employees. The agreement with CDTA is for 2 years at a cost of $5,000 per year. FRMC now seeks approval and ratification of this agreement with CDTA. The Finance Committee reviewed and approved the resolution described in the memorandum provided to the board in advance of this meeting, including making the recommendation that the board approve the same actions. So at this time, the requested action is to approve and ratify FRMC's execution of the agreement with CDTA and all acts of any officers of the corporation that were taken or made with respect to the aforesaid agreement with CDTA as requested in the memorandum provided to the board in advance of our meeting today. I'll open it up for any questions or comments.
This is Mike. Just had a question on how this will be implemented. Is this a case of giving any employee who requests to pass a pass to ride any of the CDTA buses?
That is correct, Mike. Because of the restricted parking situation on site, we're using this as an alternative for people to travel to the site. The CDTA pass does allow them to use the full suite of facilities through CDTA, but we see this as a viable option for our transportation for our employees.
Okay. And was there, I guess, interest from employees on this, or is this just something we're taking on our own?
Yes, there was interest from people on this. We have roughly 10 people who already took the requested the pass. And with the increased Purple service that is now running between Crossgates Mall and our site, there's a number of other people who are investigating it.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, we'll move to the vote. Mike Abbott,
Aye.
Heather Hage, Joan McDonald,
Aye.
and I would also like to be recorded in the affirmative. So the ayes have it and the motion is adopted. That concludes the report from the Finance Committee today. At this time, I would ask if there is any new business to be considered. And if you do have a new item for discussion, I would ask that you advance it by making a motion. Hearing none, I do have one piece of new business. I wanted to advise, if you're not already aware, that our board colleague Doreen Harris has resigned from the board effective April 19, 2024. Doreen had served as a director of New York Creates, FRMC, and FSMC since October of 2020. We would like to take this opportunity to thank Doreen very much for her dedicated service and time that she has provided to the board during those years, and for her contributions to our work. I also wanted to advise that Patricia Arciero Craig resigned from her position as the Chief Administrative Officer and Acting General Counsel of New York Creates, FRMC, and FSMC, effective on April 18, 2024. Trish joined FRMC and FSMC in November of 2017, helped establish New York Creates, which happened in 2019. And I know we are all very grateful to Trish for her many contributions to our work and for supporting our work as board members over the last 6.5 years. So our thanks to Trish. The last piece of new business that I have is just to let you know that Rebecca Borden, who is a senior associate counsel, is now serving as acting general counsel while a recruitment is underway to fill that post. So that concludes the new business.
Kristen, before we move on, this is Dave Anderson. I just wanted to thank you, Kristen Proud, as our vice chair, welcoming Doug Gross back as chair of the board, but thank you for your efforts in leading these meetings while that position was vacant. Thank you.
Thank you for acknowledging that, Dave. I appreciate it. At this time, I would like to open it up for public comment. If anyone from the public would like to take this opportunity to provide comments, we would certainly welcome that. I would ask that you begin by introducing yourself and also that you would contain your comments to 2 minutes or less, please. All right, seeing no one from the public seeking to speak at this time, I would just note that if you have any questions, they can be directed to New York Creates spokesperson Steve Ferentz after the meeting. With regard to the schedule for our next meeting, that is yet to be determined. And once it is determined, that will be posted on the New York Creates website. At this time, I'd ask if there's any further business from anyone, board members or officers. All right. Since there is no further business, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
This is Joan, so moved.
Thank you, Joan. A second, please.
Mike, I second it.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. This meeting is adjourned. Thanks very much for your time, everyone, and have a nice weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Take care.